Well, here to look at how Berliners have dealt with the transition are Professor Michael Sturmer, who is an advisor to the former Chancellor Helmut Kohl, and Ulrike Gero, founder of the European Democracy Lab. Good evening to both of you. First of all, Professor Sturmer, there are still unresolved issues between the old and the new, between children and their parents, particularly in the former eastern part of the country. Things that are not discussed, you know, Stasi past and so forth. Is that always going to be the case? Will it never be discussed, do you think?
Well, generational conflict is the most natural thing of the world. You find it in the Bible and you find it everywhere, and you find it in East Germany and West Germany. You even find it probably in Britain. Are there unresolved problems? I don't think we have any really convincing opinion polls, any kind of general research to prove that. It's a lot of guesswork, and I could well imagine that parents tell their kids what parents always tell their kids: if you were in my place, what would you have done?
Yeah. What do you think are the fault lines in Germany now?
Well, I think there is a generational dynamics. By chance, I was this morning on France Culture, and there were two German youngsters, one from the East and one from the former West. And what was interesting is that two generation 20-something were basically saying there's now a unified German youth, right? And I was surprised because I'm generation 64 born, and it's not really the same, which is in my sort of friendships, there are few people actually from former GDR. So is there a real mixture? Is this town still split? I mean, you know, it's different whether you grow into something unified or whether you do this unification at age 30, right? So I would say that there is a generational dynamics on how close is East and West now.
And speaking to young people who were 9, 10, 11 when the wall fell, they say that they constantly think, and it's really an issue for them, how awful it would have been for them had the wall not fallen.
No, that's too much. That demands too much imagination. For them, life, there was only one chancellor in history, and that was Helmut Kohl, and they've completely forgotten the GDR. Most Germans, half grown-up Germans, have forgotten the GDR, and it's pretty horrible offer to the citizens. Things are now balancing each other, and don't forget, Germany, much more than probably most other European countries, has always liked its differences.
Yeah.
We don't.
Do you agree?
Yes, yes and no. I mean, there is a problem of sort of what do we forget and what does it mean for collective memory, right? And there are interesting figures and opinion polls on what do pupils today know, right? And if you ask German pupils about sort of whether or not the former GDR was an unright state, a totalitarian dictatorship, they tend to not know. I mean, there is something about forgetfulness in the whole thing.
But in order to move forward, let's look now at Germany's role in the world, because Germany now has moved to a position where they're kind of the centrifugal force of keeping the European Union together. Do you ever think that that was going to be the case, that they would be the lead role?
If you read statistics, it was overblown when in 1989 Mitterrand and Maggie Thatcher thought, now there comes the California of the East and the California of the West, and it will be a big, big superpower. No, that was nonsensical, of course. The GDR was completely run down. It was a basket case, except we didn't tell people because of their pride and ego. But after a long period in a valley of tears, now Germany is forced into a leadership role, which the Germans haven't sought.
Is that a problem, that they have been forced into this role, that they actually didn't want to take a lead role in Europe?
Well, the question is still sort of for answer, whether we take that lead or not. I mean, first, there's a difference between European hegemon and European leadership, right? You can make the argument that we are more on a hegemon position than in a leadership position, because leadership is basically leading in a collective interest and giving to the others. And there's precisely a debate whether Germany more or less dominates the European governance without giving so much to the others. So that's the first question. Are we leading? Are we dominating, right? And if it's about leadership, then still the elites of this country need to get into a sort of strategic leadership position, because we have been told by the US basically for 50 years that the one thing we should never do is to lead anymore, right? So there's a whole culture about not leading. There's a big discussion now because our president, Joachim Gauck, had a huge speech at the Munich Security Conference about whether or not Germany should take a bigger international responsibility. And this debate in German citizen circles is not really well accepted. We are happy to be export nation, big Switzerland, you know. There is something about not going outside, and we still need to show evidence that we want and can lead the European Union.
Leadership by default.
Yeah.
But is that leadership anyway?
Not really, because it's leadership in one or two dimensions: economic, technology, finance, yes. But what about the miserable state of our security dimension? The Bundeswehr. The present minister is very proud that she is now introducing more prep schools, Kindertagesstätten, while the Russians are showing us what nuclear capable bombers can do to us, sending them from the western military district to the west coast of Portugal. Now, we are not, in that respect, we are not serious.
Thank you both very much indeed.